I wrapped her wound. Now the alien won't stop tasting me. The first time I saw her, she was crouched among the jagged rocks, her shimmering violet skin almost blending with the twilight sky. Her hand was pressed against her side, and I could see the faint glow of blood seeping through. My heart thumped in a mix of fear and curiosity. Humans weren't supposed to encounter extraterrestrial life so casually, yet here she was, injured, vulnerable, and undeniably real. "Hey!" I called softly, unsure if she could even understand me. Her amber eyes flicked toward me, wide and wary, and for a moment I felt the strange gravity of her gaze, as though she could peer into my very thoughts. She made a sound, part hiss, part whisper, and I realized she was in pain. Without thinking, I ran toward her. She flinched as I approached, but I held up my hands. "I'm not going to hurt you. Let me help." Her tail twitched, uncertain, but the wound on her side was deep. She needed help, and I was the only one there. I tore a strip from my shirt and knelt beside her, pressing it gently against the gash. Her breathing was shallow, and she emitted a soft melodic whine that made my chest ache. As I worked, carefully wrapping the fabric around her wound, she studied me intently. I thought it was caution at first, but then she leaned closer, almost brushing her lips against my arm. My skin tingled. I stepped back slightly, nervous, but she followed, sniffing, tasting, exploring in a way that made my pulse race. You're unusual," I murmured, unsure if she could understand words. She tilted her head, as if acknowledging the truth in my statement. Her fingers brushed mine as I adjusted the wrap, and I shivered, not from fear, but from the alien intimacy of the gesture. Once the wound was secured, I expected her to retreat. But instead she pressed herself against me, her lips brushing my neck, tasting me with an intensity that was almost unbearable. Froze. My mind screamed, "She's an alien. This is insane." Yet her actions weren't aggressive. They were curious, hungry, exploratory. "Okay," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "But maybe not so much." She didn't listen. Instead, she wrapped her arms around me, trailing her tongue along my jawline, tasting my skin like she could memorize every molecule. I felt dizzy, caught between revulsion and fascination. And yet I couldn't pull away, not fully. There was something in her need, in the way she examined me, that felt desperate, sincere. Hours passed. She never left my side. She tasted, licked, explored. My sense of time warped. I realized she wasn't attacking me, she was bonding. The wound I had wrapped was a catalyst, a bridge of trust between human and alien. Why are you doing this?" I whispered. Her eyes softened. She made a sound that resembled a sigh, then pressed closer. I understood. It was her way of showing gratitude, of connecting, of saying she trusted me. The first night I barely slept. She rested beside me, occasionally brushing against my lips or arms. It was disorienting, intoxicating. I knew humans weren't meant for this kind of closeness with extraterrestrial life, yet I felt a strange warmth in the absurdity of it. By the second day, the bond had deepened. She followed me everywhere. When I ate, she would taste my fingers, nudging me to share my food. When I spoke, she seemed to listen, humming softly, tasting each word as if it carried nourishment. I realized then that her species experienced the world through taste. Emotions, trust, and connection all communicated through the tongue. It was bizarre, overwhelming, and yet, I began to understand her. Every time she tasted me, it wasn't just curiosity. It was affection, communication, a language that humans had no word for. And I, in return, began to respond. Not with taste, of course, but with presence, with patience, with care. By the fourth day, I had to admit something. I didn't want her to stop. The alien's persistent, almost obsessive tasting had become a strange comfort. I laughed despite myself when she traced my forearm with her lips, purring softly in a sound that vibrated through my chest. "You really like this, don't you?" I asked, half joking, half serious. She tilted her head, pressing her cheek to mine. I felt her warmth, her heartbeat, if she even had one like ours, and I realized she trusted me completely. On the 5th day, the wound had healed fully. I expected her to lose interest once the danger passed, but she didn't. She licked my hands, my neck, my cheeks, her movements gentle yet insistent. It was a ritual now, a daily reaffirmation of our connection. I finally understood. I hadn't just helped an alien, I had opened a doorway. And she wasn't going to stop exploring it anytime soon. I sighed, leaning back against the rocks where I had first found her. "Well," I said, a grin tugging at my lips, "guess I'm stuck with you." Her response was immediate, a delighted trill as she climbed onto my lap, tasting my shoulder in an almost joyous abandon. I laughed, a sound of pure incredulity and acceptance. Life had handed me something unimaginable, an alien companion whose way of showing love was as strange as it was intimate. And I wasn't going to argue. For now, we existed in this small bubble of trust, curiosity, and connection, bound by the most unusual language imaginable: taste. And somehow that was enough. By the 5th day, her wound had fully healed, yet she hadn't left my side. I had expected her curiosity to fade once the danger passed, but it didn't. Instead, she followed me everywhere, tasting my hands, my neck, my cheeks, her movements insistent yet oddly affectionate. It was no longer about survival. It was ritual, a constant reaffirmation of trust and connection. I leaned back against the jagged rocks where I had first found her, watching her amber eyes glimmer with playful intensity. "Well," I muttered, half laughing, half in disbelief, "I guess I'm stuck with you." Her response was immediate, a delighted trill as she climbed onto my lap, brushing her lips along my shoulder in a display of joy and intimacy that felt almost human in its warmth. I felt the strange comfort of her presence, the undeniable connection between us. It wasn't invasive. It was her language, her way of showing gratitude, affection, and trust all at once. I realized then that I hadn't just helped an alien. I had opened a doorway to something extraordinary. Something beyond comprehension, beyond fear. Each taste, each nudge, each curious exploration was her way of saying, "I trust you. Choose you." And somehow, I didn't want her to stop. We existed now in a small, impossible bubble, bound by curiosity, trust, and a language no human could fully understand. Life had thrown me into an unimaginable companionship, and for the first time in a long while, I felt exhilarated by the unknown. I sighed, smiling against her tiny, fervent lips. "Fine," I said softly. "Then let's see where this goes." And with that, she purred against me, tasting the promise of our new, bizarre, and perfect connection.